Somebody in one of my leadership courses asked a really great question. So I recommend in my courses that we aim for a 10 to 1 positivity ratio. So that means 10 times as much we're talking about what does work, what is happening well, new ideas, what goals we have, complimenting people, patting the back, essentially these positive exchanges that give us a sense of that we're on the right track, that we're moving in the right direction, where to go, all that kind of stuff, and building relationships and so forth. And that approximately 10% of the time then we're talking about what's not working, what we have to fix. We can talk about problems in a positive way, so it doesn't have to be a negative. So for example, if people are having a really hard time with conflict, some people are, but a lot of people are doing great. We can say, all right, so overall we're doing pretty well with conflict. Let's talk about how to get even better, right? So that's still addressing a problem directly, but doing it in a positive manner. Sometimes you have to direct a negative thing directly. You might have to say, hey, the 5 times this week you've said something really rude to Joe, so you need to cut that out. But let's talk about how to get better about that. Where have you been polite to Joe in the past? How do you do that? How did that work? Here's some other ideas to do it, right? So you can still sometimes address a problem very directly and then get better at it. But the question that I really want to address that this guy asked was a really great and very insightful question. He said, how realistic is it for someone to speak and to communicate at a 10 to 1 ratio? Right, so that's a great question. And it's the kind of thing that unpack that, just to say, first of all, it depends on where you start, of course. Right? So if you're starting at more negatives than positives, it's going to take a long time to really make the shift. But this is a process of getting better and better. So just think about it when you're any sport. So if you're shooting basketball, you're playing hockey, you're doing cross stitch. It doesn't matter what it is. Yeah, cross stitch is a sport. It'll be in the Olympics someday. You just watch. But seriously, when you first do it, it's awkward, it's cumbersome, you're not really hitting it right, but over time you get better and better and better, and it's faster and faster, and you can do more with it. So with the tools that I teach in the course, I have videos on a number of these tools you can look at as well, but the daily highlights, positive priming, positive reframes, that kind of stuff. If you really are diligent about it, pretty quickly, within a couple weeks, whether it's with your family, whether your work team, whatever it is, you can at least get up so you're more positive than negative. At least maybe even 2 to 1, 3 to 1. 3 times as positive, right? Which is sort of what some of the researchers implied around work teams is about the average, a decent work team. Now the high performance teams usually range like 5.6 positive to every 1 negative, all the way to I think it's 11.4 or something like that. But anyway, so that's why I say aim for 10 to 1. You don't have to hit it, just get up in that range. 6 to 1 or better, you're doing great. You don't want to go too far. But back to the realistic question. So if enough people on the team have a commitment toward this and are willing to put some work into it, it's actually fairly realistic to at least improve within a couple weeks, like I said, to a more positive ratio. The more you practice these skills, here's the good news, the more you to speak about the positive stuff and reframe things to move you forward, less and less blaming, less and less focusing on what you don't want people to do. Again, you still have to focus on those things. Just don't overdo it. Or if you focus on a problem, get off it. Get to a solution as soon as possible. All those improve your ratio dramatically. So let's just say you've been practicing these tools and you see some improvement. It starts to change the culture of the team. It literally starts to, in some ways, if you do it long enough, starts to actually change your own personality, right? So when I first started doing this a couple decades ago and trying to really improve, because I was very negative, very sarcastic, and I thought that was a good thing, but it wasn't so good, people tell me. It took me a long time to make those improvements. And I would say probably took me a few years to get up to the 10 to 1 ratio. And I don't do it every day. Sometimes I totally blow it. So it's not realistic to expect anybody to be at a 10 to 1 ratio all the time. I don't think it's possible. And if you're doing it every day, also be careful that you're not faking it, because fake positivity doesn't work. Not addressing problems that need to be addressed doesn't work. All those backfire and cause problems. So, but back to the thing about realistic and can you get there is part maybe how I'd reframe the question. So if you're committed enough, as the culture starts to get better, as your relationships start to get better, you have more positive things to talk about. It becomes, instead of a vicious cycle of negative feeding on negative, it becomes a vital cycle of positive building on positive. So you have more to talk about. And if you do it on a daily basis, your brain starts to habituate, right? Make habits out of whatever you do on a regular basis. So you start to become better and better at doing that, and becomes more easy for you. So literally, it's a part of our brain called the basal ganglia, which, among other things, helps us put things into habit. So it doesn't take a lot of effort to do it. So the good news is, the more habits you form, whether it's around gratitude, whether it's around catching people doing things right, whether it's sharing highlights with people every day, whether it's positively priming people about what is good about the new thing you're talking about, or praising your kids for what they're doing authentically, that's working for them. Talking with people about how they're doing things well, whatever it might be. The more you practice these things, they get easier and easier to do, and then the nice thing is, you can start to build more skills and go to the next level, from sort of an ability to have it even up to the point of mastery, of really being able to craft very energizing language. And by the way, highly energizing language does have a little tinge negative. It's mostly positive, but there's still a tinge to keep people grounded on the earth and know what they have to be afraid of or worry about. But you don't ever, try not to anyway, talk about those things to such a degree that it paralyzes people, brings them to despair, makes them want to avoid you, makes them give up, all that kind of stuff. So it's really about finding the balance versus going too extreme. And most of us are way in the negative balance. I've actually worked with a couple of folks who said they're too far in the positive, and they avoid too much conflict. So wherever you are, you want to come into that right zone. So habits. So realistically, if you're below 1-to-1 ratio, more negative than positive, it may take a few years of really diligent effort to be able to do 10-to-1 ratio, more 10 positive and 1 negative, more often than not. So it does take time. But here's the great news. It's not like life is the same until you hit 10-to-1. Every bit more positive you get, every time you avoid one more conflict or if someone's mad at you for saying something that hurt their feelings or whatever it might be, every time you avoid one of those things, life is better. Every time you energize somebody to go out and want to be excited about their job or about going to school or to come home to see you, whatever it might be, every little bit of that makes a difference, and often a considerable difference. It starts to sort of escalate disproportionately. So, these are real things. But they take work and diligence. It's not just a matter of wishing it to happen or hoping for it. You really have to work at it. The good news is that it's so worth it. Life is short and precious, and boy, if you can get to a better positivity ratio, not only will it be more positive, but you're going to be more popular, you're going to be happier, more attractive to people. And the research from positive psychology is showing you're going to actually be healthier as well, because you're gaining more and more resilience and you're reducing your stress load quite a bit. So the key question I would ask you is, how can you get better today?